Hey everybody, this is Professor Steve from Grand Canyon University, and today's video I wanted to show you the features and utilities that are available in Server 2012 with respect to configuring your Active Directory environment. So just to preface where we're at this point, we've installed the Active Directory Domain Services role, which is listed here. We have the DNS role installed, and it's got some minimal file and storage services installed. Those are there by default whenever Server 2012 is installed. So once you're actually in the environment in Server Manager, if you go up to Tools, you have a lot of different features in here. Obviously, the ones up here that say Active Directory are utilities that are available for you. ADSI is a kind of a object editor in Active Directory. We don't really use that too much. And I think that's it for this, the amount of Active Directory tools. So I wanted to kind of walk you through each one of these for just a little bit. So if we go to Active Directory Administrative Center, this is actually a new utility that was initiated in Server 2012. Kind of a one-stop shop for administering your network. So like on the overview page, you got some really common applications, things like that you want to pay attention to, like reset passwords. You can do something really quick here if you know the username. You can set a password and you can make them change it, or if they're locked out, you can unlock them if that's the case. As well as a global search. So if you wanted to find an object, such as a computer or whatever, you can use that without actually having to dig too far into like Active Directory users and computers and that type of thing. So just a note in here, if you wanted to enable, all right, so backing up, there is a feature in Active Directory that is called the Active Directory Recycle Bin. This is your fail-safe, as it were, if you were to ever delete any objects in Active Directory accidentally. You would have the ability, similar as your recycle bin in Windows, you could go into the recycle bin and pull the file out if it's still in there. So in order to enable you have to enable the Active Directory recycle bin first. So if you come over here to enable recycle bin, you can click on that and you can click OK. This basically telling you, says once it's enabled, it can't be disabled. I'm not sure why you would ever want it to be disabled at this point, if after you've enabled it, because it's really a good feature to fall back from. And it also makes it so that if you do delete an object, you don't have to go into your backups and try to restore a user or a computer object if that's what was the story. So we'll click OK. And please refresh now to say it is done. So if I refresh, it's now grayed out, meaning it's available. And you actually have a new object right here called deleted objects. So anytime you were to delete a user, it'll go over there for a little bit, and then you can always go back and restore from there. So, so yeah. So let's jump back over here to Server Manager. Oh, sorry. The one thing I wanted to point out on Active Directory Administrative Center is anything you do in here has an equivalent PowerShell command. PowerShell is deeply, deeply integrated into Active Directory these days. So if you were to reset a user's name or something like that, there would be if you go down here to this Windows PowerShell history, you can actually see the command that is used to do what you just did in the graphic interface. So if you're trying to script something out in PowerShell, that's a really good utility to try to get you in the right direction as far as the script goes. So the next thing down is Active Directory Domains and Trusts. So this I don't get into this very often because it's just not a function that you really need to do. So there's not the only reason I would ever get in here is if I was wanting to raise the domain functional level or to raise the forest level. You get a couple options. So let me expand this to make this a little bit bigger. But so right here, Active Directory domains and trusts, I'm at the top level. If I wanted to increase the forest level, then I would right click here and say change or raise forest functional level. This also allows me the ability to change my operations master, and I'm going to do another video on what's called the FSMO roles, or the flexible single master operation roles. There's 5 of them in Active Directory, and those are very important because they only exist on one system, or there's only one of each of them. So unless you have multiple child domains, and then we'll get into something a little bit different there. But just note that if you wanted to raise or change who the operations master is, you can do it from in here. Let's see, under properties, there isn't really anything that is life-shattering there. If I right-click on the second level, I can do a raise domain functional level. So the top level is kind of the forest, and the second level is the domain functional levels, and you can change those there. In properties, this is where you can set up trusts between multiple domains. If you have child domains, they inherently trust each other because they're under the same forest. But if I had Microsoft.com and GCU.edu, those are different forests and they don't trust each other. So I would have to go into here and tell it to trust a particular domain. So my instructor.net, I trust GCU.edu. They may not trust me back. So basically that's a one-way trust. If I trust GCU.edu and GCU.edu trusts GCUinstructor.net, that's what's called a two-way transitive trust. The trust goes both directions. So that's really beyond the scope of this particular video. I just wanted to mention that you can set up trusts in this environment so that user objects from one domain can be trusted in another domain to be provided resources or what have you. Let's see. So that's basically Active Directory domains and trusts. Again, I don't use that function too often. Active Directory module for PowerShell. Again, I can manage pretty much every aspect of Active Directory in PowerShell. I don't know how to, but it is something that you can do with the amount of experience. I do have some experience in PowerShell, but not to fully manage Active Directory. But the internet's a big place, and you can find pretty much anything you need. The next one down is Active Directory sites and services. I don't use this one terribly much, but I do use it a little bit, especially in the instance where I want to be able to force replication between multiple servers. If you have multiple sites with servers in each of those sites, there is a lag in the amount of time it takes to replicate that information from one server to the next. So you can force replicate that in Active Directory sites and services. Just need to be careful because if there's a lot of data to replicate, it can cause your system your network to get overwhelmed with the amount of replication that's happening. So we'll just go through these real quick. Inter-site transports, if you browse these down, there's IP and SMTP. Site links, basically, this controls the replication time period between multiple sites. So, and there's a cost. The higher the number of cost, the less priority it gets. So you can think of it as buying a television from two different retailers. So if Walmart has a television, the same television at $100, and Best Buy has it for $200. My cost is less to go to Walmart and purchase it there. So it's the same principle in Active Directory here. Controlling sites, the lower the cost, the better usage of the network that I'll use to get to where I want to go. And the replication interval, 180 seconds. No, 180 minutes. Sorry, it's in minutes. So in 180 minutes, which is basically 3 hours, you will replicate your information from one server to the next. You could turn that down. I think ours at the bank is right at 30, 60, or 90 minutes. So we're definitely less than the 180 that's set up here. SMTP, we don't really use that too much. At least we don't at our environment. So we'll just skip over that. Subnets, you can actually configure a new subnet here and then assign it to a site. So in our environment, we're using 192.168.0.0/24. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm saying that I'm using this address. I have a Class C subnet mask, and that is the IP address for the site that I'm in now. And then I'll assign it to this guy, default first site name. That's the default site name that's used whenever you first create a domain. So click OK, and it'll add a site. So basically, now we've got some information to play around with as that goes. So if we scroll down here underneath servers, we've got basically DC type. GC means it's a global catalog server, and a global catalog means I have a full listing of all the objects in Active Directory, which is good. I don't usually have a server that's not a global catalog server unless it's in a site, maybe it's a less secure site, or the bandwidth between that site and your headquarters is relatively low that you can't let it replicate everything. Okay, and then down here, NTDS settings, I only have one server on this particular or a domain controller in here, so I don't have any additional information for it to do any kind of replication with. But if I did, I would have a automatically configured address here on the right hand side, and I can right click on that and say replicate now, which will basically force the entire Active Directory catalog from one server to replicate with another. So that's kind of what Active Directory Sites and Services is used for. It works out pretty well, and like I said, I only use that really to force replicate or add a new network. And then under Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers. We don't have much time left in the video, so I'll actually record a separate video just for Active Directory Users and Computers. That's where I spend most of my time, and there's quite a bit to go into this. So basically, this is where you would control all the objects in your domain, whether they be computers, users, groups, printers, whatever. So we will. I'll record another video, like I said, on Active Directory Users and Computers, and we'll see you next time.